Hey, everybody. This is Greg McDonough. I'm the host of the Chief Endurance Officer podcast, and I'm here with Keat again for our fifth of our series of what started as four, and now I added five because I sweet talked her into talking about running. If you don't know Beck, she's got 30 years of professional athlete and coaching experience, six-time Iron Distance champion. Was that Challenge Roth? I couldn't tell from the flag which challenge race that was.
Uh, I don't know which one you're talking about, but when I got the world record, Chrissy Wellington actually said it first, and then I broke it as well, but she'd already reset it. So technically, we both broke the old world record, but that was in Roth. I don't know. The
Okay.
flag one might have been. I don't know. I carried the flag a couple of times. I'm not sure what that one was
Yeah,
from.
I love Challenger. That's a whole other kind of other conversation. But anyways, Beck's got a deep background experience in exercise science, nutrition. She's a triathlon coach at Team Series, Team Tri. She also runs two nonprofits, Believe Ranch and Rescue, and in Horse in Your Hands Action Fund. Needless to say, she's a busy woman, and we've got about 20-25 minutes of her time. Beck, thanks for joining me again.
You're so welcome. I'm so grateful to be on here. Yeah, we did the swim one, so I thought it's really relevant to do one for running too, considering on the weekend, I'm going to brag. Now, I'm not bragging for me. I did do it too, but I had some of the guys are on this YouTube watching five athletes do their first half marathon on the weekend. So it was really fun here in Santa Barbara or here in Santa Ynez.
That's fantastic. Yeah, those first time experiences just, you always go back to them. For those in the audience, if you've got a question for Beck, please use the chat. That is live, and we will field them as they come in. But Beck, let's jump in. So just to set some stage, we're having a conversation around sort of the newer athletes. So to your point about the guys that just finished the half marathon this weekend, we want to start talking to them. I'm kind of thinking about like when I started this 10 years ago, what would have been one good piece of advice that would have changed my first race or my fifth race or something? So that's kind of the stage that we're setting. And I'd love to know from you, like when you're working with a new athlete and you're focusing on the run portion of a triathlon, like what are some key elements that you're diving into right away?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always find out what their background is, like if is any background in any kind of sport. Their age is really important. Any niggles or injuries that they may have had or are feeling right now or have had in the past, because it's so important to know that. Um, and just yeah, their long-term, short-term goals. And I think the big one I always just say, like, try to just listen to one person if you're going to go all in. We have a different philosophy. Other coaches have other philosophies that work, but go all in and try to block out sort of all the noise, because there's so many data-driven coaches that just it's really hard for newbies to get their head around that, and they don't really understand a lot of the metrics in, say, Training Peaks or what TSS score is or what VO2. I got asked that today, and I was like, "Hey, you've never done a VO2 max test. It's probably not relevant to you right now as a beginner runner kind of thing." So there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of fitfluencers, and it can be frustrating to see some of this stuff. But it's just yeah, they go all in, and it's great. And if they want more scientific, like we can go scientific, but we tend to like try to stay away from the data or the analytics and analyzing all the metrics and stuff, especially for new people, because it changes really quickly when you get fitter and fitter and fitter. It all changes. Your heart rate zones change and all of that too. So
That's really insightful. Can you think of an example of an athlete getting, especially early on, getting too wrapped up in the data? I mean, it's overwhelming, right? It's you've got your Garmin, you've got Swift, you've got full gas, you've got power meters, you've got run meters, you've got data on data on data. And I find sort of at some point, and really it comes down to feel and fitness. I'd
Mhm.
love for you to expand on your philosophy and really help the audience understand like the difference between those two pathways.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. And I'm glad you support this kind of style. And there is definitely a time and a place for the other. And I think when you're at the very high end, like the top 2%, I think you're having a chat with Anna, who's here right now. She's pushing on the top 1% in the world. Like, yes, they can start to analyze it a lot more then. And I have my exercise science background, so I do love numbers, but very much for beginners and the more intermediate levels. I want them to learn to understand their bodies and understand what it feels like in zone 5 and zone two. And a lot of them looking at their data all the time, they don't understand it, but they get in what I call the dreaded gray zone. And that can happen a lot with groups too. When we trained in groups, I was guilty of going moderate all the time, and then you don't have that high end, you're not going too slow enough, so you don't recover. So we really want to focus on like make the hard hard. I just had this conversation with one of my athletes. He's probably watching right now. And make the easy easy. But the easy should be so easy. I joke, I say, your grandma should be able to keep up with you when you're going easy. Maybe not, but some people's grandma probably could. But the easy's got to be really easy, and learn to feel your body. And I ban some of them from, I have some athletes that are really data driven, and they're, like engineers type mindset. They're engineers. I got a chemical engineer, and she's very data driven. And she had a Garmin, an Apple Watch, a Aura Ring, and a one other. And I was like, I said, take it all off. And then I noticed an Aura Ring. I said, are you wearing an Aura Ring too? And so she had like 5 different ways she was measuring, and they were all different. They're all different because they all calibrate differently. And I said, I want you to run free, run naked, not literally, but run free on a Sunday for your long run and just go for time. And Chris McCormack, famous Aussie, multiple
Mhm.
world champion, he did that too on a Sunday. He wouldn't even wear a timing watch. He said he would go out and guess on a new course every time when he was at the hour mark and then turn, and he would try to get spot on the 2 hours. He tells this story and it's brilliant. So I think there's so much importance for just learning to listen to your body and knowing that feel, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because I upgraded my Garmin watch, I don't know, 2 months ago, and now it's giving me data, sleep data, recovery data, similar to my Aura ring. And so I just picked the one that tells me the better story instead, because
I found
they
my
never match.
Yeah, they never match. And I found my Aura Ring, and Siri and I had to take ours off. And we loved them at first. And then I think as they got like maybe sunscreen in them and weren't calibrating correctly, she said she was really worried. Her average heart rate was really high in one of her runs. And I said, please stop looking at that. Like, and she's a little more data driven than me now. We're going the opposite way. And she's like, it said average 160, was going up to 200. I said, Siri, you know, as a coach, that is not physically possible. She started to get in her head. I said, give me the ring and I'll try it, because I know mine's not going to go to 200 sprinting up the hill. So we're sprinting up the hill. And it did. And we realized that it's probably getting mixed up with the steps of your feet, which can happen a lot with heart rate monitors and Garmin's as well, where it's measuring the beat of your cadence rather than your heart rate. So you see all these top guys now, Lionel Sanders and Blumenfeld, they wear, and I'm not an advocate for this because I feel like it cuts my breathing off, but they wear the chest strap, because to get really accurate, you really have to have that chest strap on.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I've been using the Wahoo arm strap and
Yeah, they're much more accurate.
putting the sensor on the inside of the arm where the
Yeah.
skin's a little thinner.
Yeah.
Um, So back in our last conversation about swimming, we spent a lot of time on technique, and I would one personally would benefit from a conversation around run technique. But um, do you like what is a proper like? I went from soccer to swimming and finally into triathlon. I never was a real runner. Did some sprinting in high school, but
Yeah.
never really paid much attention on my running technique. And I think now as I continue to add on races and distance, I'm kind of hindering from that. Um,
Mhm.
what do you, how do you work with your athletes, or what kind of technique should we be focusing on? And maybe it's different by athlete, but just like to give you some space to talk about sort of run technique.
Yeah, and thank you for asking that. All of my theory comes from honestly training with Siri. And Brett was similar, especially professionally wise. This is where there can be a little difference with the placement when you're landing. Your strike should be midfoot or ball of your foot. I know with really slow running, I shouldn't say slow, but people that have just started and they're going to take 6 hours for the marathon.
There's
Um,
nothing wrong with that, by the way.
right,
That's
exactly.
my
Like,
time.
right, but sometimes getting on the ball of your foot when your body is exhausted, it's not really going to benefit, because you're not really getting that power per step. You're just trying to
Mm,
shuffle to get through it. So there is a little bit of, but if you're someone who wants to break 2 hours for the half marathon, or you're going to do 4 hours or under, or you're right at the top end where you're running a 125, 130 or quicker for the half, like as you see people getting quicker, and Daniela Reef's a bit of an anomaly because she definitely was more of a heel striker. But if you look at Chrissy Wellington, right on the balls of her feet. I say run like Rennie. If you watch Marinda Carfrae run, and there's really been no one better yet, but her technique is just to die for. Like it is like poetry in motion. And when I have a good day, I could get close to that. But it's that tiny bit of forward lean, but it's not forward lean from the hips. It's forward lean, like you're almost falling forward. And I tell my guys this all the time. You think about a string attached to the middle of your head and it's pulling you up and forward. And that's
Mm,
the position you want, not from the bent hip, from actually from the ground. You're almost falling forward. And ideally, that's what you kind of want as a more conditioned runner. As an age grouper that's just trying to shuffle through, like it's a little harder, but the forward lean will still help. And I think the biggest thing for us with our age group guys that are more newbies is like little quick steps rather than overstriding. So aim for the middle of your foot. Heel striking is not recommended. If you're doing it, you're doing it. But heel striking, you are going to have that way more shock through your body because you're it just puts the brakes on and it puts a lot of strain through your knees. It can make you overstride more if you're landing under your hips and landing on the ball of your foot. Is much less likely to get injured, and definitely shorter straight steps. I used to always think, oh, you'd have to stride out to go faster, and we're not sprinters, we're endurance athletes. So the quicker cadence, the quicker turnover, and the shorter stride, we found with our experience in the series, obviously one of the best run coaches in the world. That's worked so well for our athletes, and it's faster, and you're less likely to be injured. So I would say mid to ball of your foot, forward lean, and then there's so much more. Shorter steps, quicker steps, cadence for someone who's a 120 half marathon or 2 or 3 hour marathon runner. We would be around, and it does vary with height. Like Rennie might have been around 200, 190. I'd say closer to 200, but she was holding like 10 miles an hour. So she was holding like 4 minute K pace or 6 15-minute miles. So hers is around 200. I'm a little taller, but mine was still at least 195 to 200 for the halves for sure over that quick distance. But when you're really tall and 6 foot plus, sometimes you can't get to 200. Like Jan Frodeno, I doubt he would have been up there. He may have been 185 or something. So you don't want to be 160. Like you want to have a little quicker than that. But when you're going easy, Siri and I kind of argue on this because when you're going easy, you can't really have a 200 cadence because you're going so slow. But she tries to say, well, let's try to get it the same when you're running. So I'm like, you're basically running on the spot. So we're back and forth on that. But when you're running easy, it's very hard to have a 200 cadence. You can't do that. You need to be at like maybe 160 or 170, but you just want to think short steps, quick steps. What does she say? Quick steps, little feet, quick steps, little feet. That's what she was yelling at Rennie up Alihi Drive, like fast feet, quick feet, fast feet, quick feet. You'll hear Siri yelling that to her athletes every time. Up Palani, up in Kona to Rennie, and Rennie would that's what she would think about. Quick feet, little feet, quick feet, little feet.
that's brilliant. And just to
Yeah.
clarify, that's 200 per minute, right?
Yeah.
200, the one,
200
two,
for
and two.
both legs, so 100 per leg.
Yeah, yeah. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I'm going to dive deeper into that personally. So thank you for sharing. Switching to talk, have a little conversation around training. Before we get to that, let's talk about shoes, right? So if you're a newer athlete, you're starting to get into gear. Let's say you're doing a full distance in August and you started training December, January. Like, is it best practice to be replacing our shoes at some point across? Obviously, it depends on when you bought the current pair, but at some point across a 9-month training cycle with the run volume to get you to an Ironman finish, are we replacing shoes like a couple months before a race, or are we kind of sticking with let's say we assume they were brand new shoes in December? Like, are we staying with that same shoe across the training schedule, or do you see like an equipment replacement at some point? Obviously not the weekend before the race, but
Yeah.
we'd love to know your insights on that.
Yeah, I always try to, that's a great question because we just had this conversation with my guys that ran the half. And I always say, stay at the same style of shoe. And I mean, here's the thing with the whole carbon fiber, the whole carbon plate thing too. Like, if you're not a fast runner, like, I just don't recommend it. Like, and when I say fast, I mean like elite level. It is a huge benefit if you're running fast. It is a huge benefit if you're a really good runner with perfect form. But if you're like a 2 hour plus even half marathon runner, it's going to be more detrimental because you're trying to stabilize, you're going to fatigue quicker. and you just probably don't have the conditioning like elite runners do in your legs. And I think it's going to be more detrimental than anything. Unless you're like a really lightweight. I have one guy who was 61, he's really lightweight, like absolute badass, really lean, really light and fast on his feet. Even though his first half, he chose to use the carbon plate. And I think that was probably the right decision. But other than that, if you're like more of a heavy runner or a beginner and you're not planning on breaking world records or going sort of under, I would say even 145 for the half or 3.5 hours for the full, I think it's, I know you didn't ask this question about carbon plate shoes, but I think it's detrimental more than anything. And I think Hoka for me, I wish we were sponsored by them, but we always recommend Hoka. And I used to not be a fan because they're so chunky. I used to be like, God, they're like wearing clown shoes, but they've gotten so much better. And most of my guys wear the Clifton. If they're a little lighter on their feet, and a little like say lower body weight, they go the Rincon, and I got recommended that from my British friend Mike, who's an amazing running coach, and Mike Trees. He's great. Follow him if you're online. And Mike said to me, try the Roka Rincons, the Hoka Rincons, and I love them. And they're a little bit less support than the Cliftons, because the Cliftons I found a little too chunky. And then there's another one beyond that, and I think it's a Mukta or Maka or Makta or something. But the Hokas for me would be my go-to for most athletes starting. And then to your question, I say at least 2 weeks, like try to stick with the same style of shoe, but at least 2 weeks before, be wearing it around and wearing it at home. And sometimes I recommend half size bigger for, especially for anything over 10K, because your feet swell so much, but you kind of have to get a feeling for that, because some size 10 women's like run big and some run small. So if you get the 10.5, it can be even too big. So you kind of got to play around with the size, but you should always have, like, I always say, a little thumbnail, like at least that or a little less at the end of your big toe, because you have to they do swell in Ironman for sure.
Yeah, I've noticed that a lot. And I've done the half shoe size. It seems to help.
Yeah.
Talking about, so we talked a little bit about shoes and training schedule. I'm curious, when do you start working in brick workouts, right? So we start kind of focusing on that transition, that bike to run. And we'll backpedal into some bike ideas, because obviously if you spend 100% of your energy on your bike, then you're not going to have a very good run, but we'll get into that next. When do you start adding sort of, well, one, are you a believer in brick workouts? And
Oh
a brick
God.
being, you do an hour on the bike and then 30 minutes on a run, or vice versa, but back to back. I'd love to know your theory around that, and when sort of across a 9-month, 12-month training schedule would you start introducing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think bricks are so underrated. And I used to do 3 a week, and I had my best races. Well, not everybody can do that. I had the pleasure of not working, but we used to do at least 2 and sometimes 3 a week. And that people like, that's crazy, but it doesn't have to be long. So one would be, and this is ideal, say you're retired and you can just, we'll say you're uninjured, you're a little younger, and which is not many of us, and you don't work. So you could do 3 a week. You could do the brick on Saturday, and you would start at about 4 months out from your key races, where we would start doing bike runs, and say once a week. 12 weeks out, we're doing close to 2 a week, and then at least 2 a week from 12 weeks out, 3 months out. And then from anything closer to the race, from say 8 weeks, we are doing them like two times a week. Absolutely every single, I would say 3 months out, we're doing at least 2 times a week. So 12 weeks out. And you want to run it under fatigue. Like, it's good to do, say, turnovers, which one of our favorite sessions is turnovers. So we did that a lot, say, on a Saturday, further out from the Ironman, like 12, 16 weeks out. We would just do, and this is one of Rinny's, like, love this session, one of her favorites and one of Siri's favorites, Brett Sutton favorites. And it's, you got to build into it, because obviously we don't want to injure you, but you just do 20 seconds fast, 40 seconds rest. And my squad's going to laugh, because they've been doing this a lot too. And it gets the fast twitch going, but you've got to be very careful. You have to build into it if you're new, because you don't want to be injured. And obviously you've trained prior to this, building up to this, but 20 seconds fast turnovers, 40 seconds rest. And this is a session that Siri used to give her elites all the time. And you do like 20, 30 minutes of that. And it doesn't really feel like a workout, because you're getting that 20, 40, that double rest. Your heart rate doesn't get up high enough when you're fit to get any lactic acid. It's just that it's just quick, especially for half Ironman and shorter distance. It just gets that fast twitch fibers and doesn't fatigue you, and it wakes up the speed in your legs. So we would do stuff like that even before a hard session, like before a hard run session. Turnovers, always turnovers, like 15 on, 45 off, or 20 on, 40 off. And it's sprinting, like we're doing it at like, 11, 12 miles an hour. Then when we go back and do, say, our 10 3-minute set, or 15, 20 3-minuters, or quarter milers, half milers, we're doing it at 10 miles an hour, but we've done turnovers at 11 or 12. It feels easy. So we build up for that. And that's not for everyone, because as you get into your 50s, 60s, you're obviously much more prone to injury. But that would be a session we would do a lot after the long ride. You're under fatigue and you're kind of forcing that turnover, that speed. And then when you run out of transition in a half Ironman or marathon or Ironman, you do that quick cadence for like just the first, Cyril just say, kick it out of transition, just pick it up for like a couple of seconds and then go down, pick it up, change your pace, change your state. And your legs are like, oh, I know this. And they actually, you get the momentum to run faster. I always did that out of transition. And my body was like, oh yeah, I know this. You've done this a lot. And then we'd always do a run off the Wednesday bike. And then we'd usually do another brick, like say on a Tuesday or a Thursday, where it was like an hour really hard VO2 max, like F2P, FTP type stuff. And then really hard run off, which would be like, I don't know, just pure speed, like minuters, 2-minuters. And this is not for everyone. Like, no, age groupers don't really need to be doing that kind of speed. But if you're wanting to say podium your age group, you may need to think about adding that really hard run efforts off the bike. There's so many. There's like, we would also do stuff like on a Saturday, give all our secret sauce away, but there's one thing saying it, then executing it, right? Like I said,
Yeah, that's right.
People buy a plan, so they share them. We see it being shared everywhere, even at universities, and we're like, well, there's one thing writing them and then actually having to
The accountability is
yeah,
critical.
yeah. But doing like I would say like we would do a 15K build off like a 4-hour bike or something on a Saturday, or even longer. And it'd be like 5K at 70.3 pace, 5K at 10K pace, and then get on the treadmill and just go as hard as you can. And I would have these crazy ass workouts, but I'd know like if I hit 17 minutes for my last 5K under fatigue of like 5 hours worth of fatigue, like I'm going to run under 120 for my half marathon. Like there were just certain things we know if we hit the mark, we're there. Yeah, there's some crazy there's so many crazy sessions that people are gonna be like, you're insane, but that's
right.
what I have to do, right?
And
Yeah.
Beck, to clarify, when you say 20 seconds fast turnover and then 40 seconds rest, is that standing still rest or just slower
Yeah.
turnover?
And for some people it's scary, so I have them go do it on the road, like 20 on, then just walk for 40 seconds. But it's really just, you want to build up. If you are thinking, I just need that top end speed, and you're someone who's really competitive, but you are missing maybe that speed. And we're just having the same conversation with one of our athletes who's been running so well, but she hasn't been really doing a lot of speed work. This was like, it kicks ass. Like you get the fast twitch fibers going, and your shorter distance, you'll definitely notice it, and you'll notice it at least in the half distance as well. And it's 20 on, 40 stand still on the treadmill, or just do it on the road and walk or stop for the 40. But the 20 should be at least a mile to 2 miles quicker than the pace you aim to hold or know you can hold for say 10 or 21K. Yeah.
That's awesome. So we got a question from an audience member, Gina. She said, Beck, some of the running workouts by Siri and Beck, I do running in place on my yoga mat. But when I do some of these sessions in the park, it felt much more challenging. Is that better to run outside? Is it better to run outside?
Yes, Gina, definitely. You're ready for that for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Running on the spot was more for our fitness workout. We do 15 to 20 minutes exercise with my Siri and Beck squad. And it helps to get them fit initially. But when that becomes too easy, they have to then transition to start running outside for sure. Yes.
Awesome. So we're coming up on some time. I would love to talk about injury and how to handle that sort of mid-training plan. One of my things, I pick up calf tightness injuries a little bit, a lot of rolling, it comes with my age, I think. But so and one of the beauties about triathlon is that you can focus on other disciplines, right? You can get back in the pool, maintain your fitness while you're recovering.
Yeah.
What's your conversation with athletes around injury prevention? And when it does happen, like how do we, not run through the wall going crazy?
Yep. That's a great question. I was so proud of my athletes. I just did the half marathon, and touch wood, we had four of them were at least 50 to 60 years old, and some of them hadn't ever run. They were up to a minute running, and we had 6 months. And then a lady that Hunsel from Spain ended up running 2 hours several times and then just finished the half marathon. She did it in 3 hours, which is amazing for her first one. We never got injured, but we were so
Wow.
careful. And I think communication is everything. And I learned as an athlete so many times from getting such bad injuries because I would always try to push through it. Calves were my big one, always. But I was definitely guilty of not doing the stability, strength, mobility work. I was lazy on that. And I think that ended up being to my detriment because I was constantly getting sore calves, torn calf muscles, tear my calf. And I think prevention and firstly communication with your coach 100%. Like, even if you feel it a little bit, especially for the young newbies, because they're like, I'm going to just push through that, and then they're out for 3 months. It's like, no. So we have this rule, like, if it's a 3 out of 10, take, if it's a run injury, if it's a 3 out of 10, like, we want you to take 3 or 4 days off. Like, if you're feeling it a little bit, it's about 3 out of 10 pain, have a couple of days off. And then if it's more than that, it's a 5 or 6 or something like that, where you're hopping on your leg. Like, I say, hop on your leg. Like, I want you to literally hop on the spot. Does that hurt? Oh, yeah, I can feel it. Does it hurt when you wake up? Oh, yeah, I can feel it. That's not good. So we do 7 to 10 days. And then when we start running, and they hate me for this, I don't let them do more than 1 minute on, 1 minute off for like just 5 or 10 minutes. And we build it up. We're extra cautious, and we constant communication, but also doing like the stability work, like especially for the calves, because the lower chain you want to do, my guys will laugh, the Superman, which is where you're just one leg balancing out, and you want to be able to do like 15. You're balancing on one leg and you're just leaning forward. Stuff like that, glute med work, VMO work, crab walks or band walking to switch on your glute med, hip lifts, butt lifts, bridges, all that back chain, because usually with your calves, it's because when you're landing, there's not that stability in your foot. That's what I found, because I rolled my ankles many times playing soccer and
You
basketball.
and I both. Yeah.
Yeah, I love soccer. Center mid, best, love it. Miss that team sports. I was such a hog, though. I was not a team player. That's why, as you can imagine. But that landing, your body's taking like 10 times your body weight when you're running sometimes. So when you're landing, if you're pushing off that big toe and you're not stabilizing with that ankle, those stabilizers are overworked, then your VMO is overworked, your knee doesn't really, isn't the one that's working, it's a stabilizer, but your all your quad muscles, TB, ITB, TFL, VMO, like, it's all overworked. And then your calf will go because it's just hasn't stabilized when you're hitting the ground. So I think Erin Carson is the queen strength conditioning coach. She does free Monday mobility. My guys sign up and they don't work with me for their strength. Most of the time, my lead athletes, or sorry, my one-on-one athletes all do Erin's strength training program, because I'm experienced, but I'm not an expert at it. She's a freaking guru. She got USA Strength Coach of the Year. So they do hers, and they get a strength. It's only 20 minutes. They get a strength conditioning program every day to do as part of their
That's
training.
awesome.
And then I don't have to stress about them getting injured. So yeah.
Fantastic. So Beck, audience member wants to get in touch with you. Give us your Instagram, your websites, help them find you.
Yeah, thank you. The easiest email, because my name, Rebekah Keat, I spell it long and it's got .au at the end. So do just the easiest one would be info@syrianbeck.com is our common email, just info@syrianbeck.com. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyone on the audience, if you want to provide me feedback on these YouTube live episodes, you can find me on Instagram at the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast, or Google Greg McDonough, and hopefully some good things show up. Anyways, Beck, I love this conversation. Again, my goal of this was to give enough information so it doesn't feel like overload. And I
Yep.
think we've gotten there. You know, if this was 10 years ago and I was training for my first, I would be like, what? Garmin? Who? I like shoes? No. So
I'd love
hopefully
to
some,
help you with your calf too, because there's things that I know I should have done that I didn't, and it ended up tearing at least 30 times. So I don't want that to happen to you. We can probably help that
that's
stop that
brilliant.
happening. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's to be continued then.
Yep.
Anyways, thanks, audience. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Awesome. That's so much.